Good night, and welcome to Mindful Live 424. Are we at now? Welcome, welcome. It is presently the 6th. Yes, the 6th of August. Wow. I'm seeing that and it feels surreal. How is the year already on the lower end? I am Nathan Springer, the co-host, joined today by the lovely host. Host, say good night.
Good night.
Tell the people what's up.
What's up?
Yeah. And we're chilling here in the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Paradise on earth, the place that they say isn't real, but that they say God also dwells. I'd like to believe he lives here. That would be a good thing. That would be a very good thing. So what's in the news today? I saw Olympics as per usual, the track and field events with the Caribbean shining as we usually do, and then looking over, I don't know how many of you have a profile over on X or on Twitter, that toxic place, very toxic place, I must say, but you know, nonetheless, you get the news there really on the cutting edge. You get things on the cutting edge right as it comes out. So there has been some diasporic wars over on X/Twitter, where, you know, with the Caribbean people running in the Olympics, there has always generally been a sense of Caribbean loyalty, and then the Caribbean people joining together apparently seem to rub some of the black Americans the wrong way, because they all black. That's one of those things that you see popping up. It's an interesting discussion, really and truly, about who's black, who's not, and the boundaries of ethnicity, etc., like that. That's interesting. Because it's a discussion that came to the fore, especially with the US elections, Miss Kamala Harris being the candidate going up for the Democrats. And with that being so, her ethnicity being mixed and of Caribbean, etc., etc., those things seem to pop up. Chris says, can we tick the box that this Olympics wasn't the best edition? Yeah, I think that could be ticked. Hey, Ronnie. Say, hey, Ronnie. Letty, say, hey, Ronnie. And I'm telling Ronnie, hey. Hey, Ronnie. Yeah, I think that box could be ticked. Not the best of Olympics, not the best. Nathan Isaac hater. How am I a hater? Ha! Tell us, Ria. She says what she wants to say. You're gonna sing Hey Diddle Diddle for the people. Hey Diddle Diddle. The spoon. Imagine I now log in and this is what I hear and what we talking about tonight. Well, we're talking about all kind of things, eh? We're talking about all kind of things tonight. Ronnie? Facts, RL. Facts. You know, there's been a bit of a discussion about children and the importance as such, with someone speaking about the world being run by single childless cat ladies and the consequences of a world run by childless cat ladies, and whether having children should have any sway on someone's ability to lead. Winds of change for Africa. Winds of change in what way? Ronnie Tobago is in a blitz. What's going on over in the Sister Isle? Crime and mayhem. Even with all those tint police over there. RL says, I take no advice from anyone in their 40s with no family and kids. I don't care. So what would you say for someone like the prospective US next US president, the current US vice president? Or young Panley? Chris says them hot gal is pressure. Well, I don't, if it's the Tobago issue, I don't know if that's because of the hot galness per se, or if allegedly they were after someone who was in her company and the someone escaped. RL, I am not saying I disagree, but I'm saying you have to know how you say some of these things. RL says being rich, old and lonely is quite useless. Whew. Whew. Sweet Douglas says, hi, good night, Amari Mommy, just listening and lock on. Hey, good night. I now reach what we're talking about. Yo, Mark Gladville, we were speaking about many different things. Now we're settling in on the crime issue over in the Sister Isle. What is going on in sweet, sweet Tobago? Oh, Trini Hotep, you are the man to speak on what I was speaking about firstly, when we were talking about the diaspora wars that occasionally rear its head over Caribbean and African and American issues. I saw someone speaking about the Brazilians being black, and then some black Americans came to say that they weren't exactly black. And you know, I think there is some fruit in such discussions, because partially it might be because the Africans who were enslaved had their culture, their native cultures stripped from them. So in pursuit of reclaiming some of that culture, a lot of Pan-Africanism has a very wide tent, has a massive tent. We need to increase the tactical training of our officers, Mark Gladville says. We'll see. What is the general African grouping has a massive wide tent that encompasses all. And then when you have such a wide tent that encompasses such a wide group of people, you tend to notice that actually when you go down to the borderlines of such groups, there are many people who, yes, may belong into the wide tent together, but in the specific, there are many differences. There are many differences. Yes, of course I'm reading news. Nathan never thought about running for parliament. I may have thought about it, but not for a very long time. Let's see if we could jump in over and look at some of these stories. Once you're on the inside, as per usual, make sure you hit that like button, double tap the screen over there on TikTok if you're wondering how to hit the like button there. Hit that like button. Drop a comment if you are looking at this currently on YouTube. Who are you voting for 2025? Well, when we see those candidates, then we can decide that, won't we? and we vote for MPs. I don't know who is going up to be my member of parliament. So how can I tell you who I'm voting for when I don't know who the candidate for my member of parliament is going to be? And you see, that's kind of the problem partially in Trinidad and Tobago, because the and to be fair, it's not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but the expectation is that I am supposed to know who I'm going to vote for automatically just by party allegiance already. I don't think so. With CXC subjects, I need to be a licensed officer. I need a career change. I don't know. I suppose at least 6, including math and English, and see how the application goes. I honestly don't know. I am clueless on the procedure of licensing. But just a story to browse on economics before we dive into some of this crime news, because this is an interesting thing that I saw here with the brewing of the politics in Venezuela and then the American elections coming up. Them does even recruit you? Of course they do. I hope they ain't send back Dubai. Yeah, with the difficulties brewing in Venezuela and the American elections coming up in November. Yes, in November. The deal we have over with the dragon gas could be up for some scrutiny. But our Minister of Energy says, don't beat up. Don't beat up, because things good. Young Venezuela US politics will not affect energy agreements. Energy Minister Stuart Young has expressed confidence that energy agreements between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela will not be negatively affected by the internal politics in the South American nation or in the US. Young said while TT should pay attention to what is happening in Venezuela, there were other things to consider, as the Prime Minister has said, and I saw the President General of the UN Assembly say it as well in today's newspapers. These are efforts that you have non-intervention, non-interference into the domestic politics, what is going on domestically in Venezuela. He went on to say that we have a 30-year license for the Dragon Field and we have a 20-year license for Coquina Mannequin. Those are significantly lengthy licenses. I am almost certain, having negotiated many of these deals, etc., that the licenses and all the commercial terms and conditions of these licenses can stand up to any scrutiny by anyone, anywhere in the world. Good night, Rose Petal Angel. At this point, does Trinidad and Tobago need Kamala to win? I don't know. I don't know that which way would be beneficial to us. Same people who say Petrotrin not closing, Sheepman says, hi. These politicians are either smelling too much fuel or just blind to the fact of what is happening in Venezuela. And that's what I'm here to see. That's what I'm here to... Exactly, RL. Yes, because the Venezuelan government is so reliable and will stick to their word. Wilfred Adolphus, I don't disagree on whether Petrotrin had to close or not. That's not the point. The point was them saying that they weren't going to close it and doing so. That's where the treachery is. Where Petrotrin having to close, I happen to agree with that. I happen to agree. But the treachery in saying you're going to do one thing and doing another is where the problem arises. What do you think about protests in the UK? We'll get to that. Let's not dive too far ahead. And I totally disagree with the energy minister here. Like, I understand that he's trying to reassure the country and he'd like us to believe that this is going to work and money is on the horizon from this and we are going to see a good time from this. But really and truly, of course, the politics in Venezuela and the United States can and will affect that deal. Chris 868 says Petrotrin could have been saved if the corruption inside could have been handled by those in power years before. Yeah, and a pig would fly if it had hollow bones and wings, but they don't. I mean, I agree. Petrotrin could have theoretically been saved. Petrotrin was a profitable business model that was supposed to be able to continue in perpetuity. Yes, ideally, yes. But as it was running, no. That is not what was happening. It was not what was going to happen. It wasn't what was happening. And it wouldn't make sense to say, well, let's hope that happens and keep the thing running while it sucks out of our largesse. So that we lost the Petrotrin deal. The government really needed that money for the election next year. But I disagree. To return to the story, I disagree with our energy minister. Of course, Venezuelan politics is going to have an effect. Venezuelan politics had an effect on the oil and gas deals previously. There were already multinational companies inside of Venezuela that were chased out and had their assets seized by the socialist government when they came into power under Mr. Chavez. So, of course, what happens in their politics is and will have an effect on our deal. Exactly, Chris 868. If we're not running the things profitably, why should we continue running them and keep running them at a loss? Just certain members of the society benefit from it, and that's what the callousness some people don't seem to understand when they ask for some of these things. When they want to get a raise of pay in the public service without the commensurate raise in value, where's the money coming from? When you want Petrotrin and Caribbean Airlines and those other companies to keep running at a loss with the government bailing them out every year, where's the money coming from? Yes, I know that Chavez selected Maduro. I don't get what's the issue there. Why can't we ask Exxon to do some deep sea exploration and abandon this deal? Any deal so unstable? Well, I believe if we had anything to explore worth exploring, we would have sold those rights already. We are constantly attempting to sell those exploration rights. So it's a common thing that you see in the newspapers that this one is sold and that one is sold. It's just they aren't finding much. The gas deal was going to benefit the West. Sanctions, American free. I am not understanding what you're saying there exactly. Which gas deal? What's up, host? You look sleepy. Are you ready to go sleep? Okay. Ready to go sleep? Yes, I think you're ready to go sleep. Someone asked about the UK protests. What do I think about the UK protests? I think they're inevitable. I don't know how they're going to end. Well, I think they're going to end with the UK government clamping down very strictly on the rioters by and large, but I think it's inevitable, and I think it's not going to stop in the long run, because the conditions that spark that kind of protest, they exist still, and they continue to be exacerbated And it's obviously going to continue like that. There are proven deep water reserves. Question is why the companies don't want to drill them. That's a good question. I don't know. Because allegedly those are up for bid and the companies aren't taking those bids. Open border policy is terrible. Yes, it is terrible and it causes chaos. If we have nothing left to explore, then we citizens need to understand the future looks bleak. I don't even think so. I think Trinidad has the ability to be what Mr. Manning had imagined it to be, with being the regional hub, the regional commerce hub, the regional shopping hub. Those are things that don't necessarily require oil and gas. They just require good management. UK protesting, Nigeria protesting, Bangladesh protesting. Would USA have protests after November? I think once Trump wins, if he wins, it's going to be pandemonium in the US. There are going to be lots of protests. Many protests. If Kamala wins, I don't think there would be many protests. But I think if Kamala wins, just to browse over to the United States election stuff, I think if Kamala wins, the US democracy as it has been would be permanently changed, because that would be a unique thing for the US democracy. She would not have been voted in by a primary vote. She would have been selected basically by the party, placed there along with her vice president, and they would have no choice but to vote for that person. So that would be a unique thing in their democracy, a little shade away from more democratic to less democratic along that line. Why was Vision 2020 shut down? Why was the Financial Towers plan scrapped? I don't know. When Trini's gonna protest, I protest with who? Who is going to lead this protest? And protest for what? If we are protesting for something, I suppose. And what would we be protesting for? What would we want in this protest? What would we say we want? We hit the streets. We shut down the roads and the jobs and the businesses. And we want what? We want Rowley to resign, and who gets into power? What do we want? Better governance, and how do we get that? When we protest, we hit the roads, and we say we want better governance. We demand it. How? How? Like, looking at the landscape as it exists now, what do we demand? Personally, I fed up with fire on these roads. Well, Fire Flame, like something like that could actually make more sense. Like the Obia man and those Tobagonians, they have a point. If you tell me we're coming out to specifically protest the oppressive licensing regime that the PNM government is placing on the people, and how we are going to protest this is we are going to highlight the bad roads, we are going to go slow, we are going to something, well, there. There. Alright, that's something to protect. Harry says transparency and accountability. How? Sweet Douglas says we don't want PNM and UNC again. We want betterment. How? It says better infrastructure, healthcare, overall management. How? All of these are beautiful cliches, and every single politician would tell you, yes, we're giving you that. Good night, Joy. This is the point I'm making on the protesting front. How are we getting all of these things? We want better governance, we want healthcare and overall management and all of these lovely things. Okay. When we go on the road and we hold the placards, how does that translate to any of those things? Do you have the answers, or are you just highlighting how is a long list of things to fix? You see, the problem, I think, is that many people think there are some answers to these things. There are some magical answers. Like there's some politician out there that we could vote for who is going to come in and magically fix all of these things, while not understanding that, alright, in the first place, even if we found the people honest enough to really want to tackle these issues are way more complex than we believe. The idea of healthcare, okay, we want better healthcare. What do you mean by that? That everyone in Trinidad is going to get free healthcare? Free healthcare to what level? We have to fix the things ourselves. Now you're getting into what I'm speaking about. So it's not about highlighting a long list of things to fix. It's about understanding what the things are first, so that we don't run out like headless chickens into oncoming traffic and get blown out and blown away and used like useful idiots for other people's motives and political movements. Trinidad need a dictator with who actually about country because the politicians not working. The benevolent dictator would be a lovely idea if he existed. If he existed, it would be a lovely idea. Trinidadians need to raise our personal standards, and then we can demand better. Free healthcare and free education is not a right, actually, and people need to understand that. I fully agree there. We need to eat proper. Too much people is sick and in this country, and I agree. Oh, Michael Modesto, of course it's a bad idea, but what's going on with democracy? Let's see the crime situation. Suspected gang member is Tobago murder number 19. Dolly boss shot dead. Blood continues to flow in Tobago as the sister recorded its 19th murder for the year, with the killing of a woman who is alleged to be a gang member. She was shot multiple times in Argyle, Tobago. The Express learned that she was hiding out in the countryside in Tobago with other alleged gang members. Police said Guerra was on the street leading to Argyle Waterfall when a car pulled up and a group of men exited and fired several shots at her and a man in her company. Both Guerra and the man were taken to the Roxborough Hospital. Guerra, who was under police guard at the hospital, died while the man was grazed by a bullet and escaped death. The gunmen also went on to shoot an alleged 6 gang member in Pembroke. Police said the shooting of Dolly Boss may be a reprisal for Saturday's shooting of Ezra Sylvester, who was shot multiple times in Scarborough. He died at the General Hospital around 9:15 on Saturday. He was said to be a member of the 6 gang. Police reported that Sylvester was sitting on a chair under a tent at the Old First Citizens Bank car park located on Carrington Street when a black matrix stopped on the roadway. 5 men who were armed with firearms exited the vehicle and began shooting. 5 men armed with firearms. Not you aren't the only one, Joy. You aren't the only one. Abu Friday, here's the problem with the dictator versus the democracy. Democracy, the bureaucracy of the democracy makes things slower and makes it much more difficult for abuse to happen. If a dictator wanted to abuse a whole section of the population, he just had to say so, and by morning it happened. So the idea of democracy is that we sacrifice the ability to get things done quickly, which a dictator would do. We sacrifice that ability in pursuit of the hedging of human nature. We disperse the authority as much as we can so that the authority isn't accumulated into one person where we could see the negative sides of that authority. Police had warned Sylvester that his enemies wanted him dead. He had survived a previous attempt to kill him. That's kind of funny. That's kind of funny that police warning alleged gang members that their ops want them dead. Okay. Police stupidity. Chairman of the Tobago Business Chamber, Martin George, yesterday expressed alarm over the murder and mayhem taking place in Tobago. He reiterated the Chamber's call for vehicle scanners at the ports, which he believes will play an integral part in preventing guns from getting into the island. There are too many illegal guns in Tobago. It's a simple fact, and we need to deal with it. There's an inflow of illegal drugs in Tobago that also needs to stop, George said in a WhatsApp video message yesterday. He said the chamber was concerned and disappointed by the rising murders on the island. Chiding the police and their policing style, he said, "We have police officers in Tobago devoting time and resources to chasing down an Obia man, to arrest him and lock him up because he allegedly tried to work Obia on transport officers from the transport division. That's the folly and stupidity that our police officers are engaged in, while murder and mayhem continue to wreak havoc on our beautiful island." George further knocked the stupidity of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in Trinidad as he pointed to the arrest of a maxi taxi driver in City 8 in Port of Spain on July 17th. He added, "If these frivolities are what you have exercising the minds and brains of the intelligentsia of the police service, then clearly they are not focused on trying to stop or reduce murders and crime and gun trafficking and drug trafficking." Why we have so much of murders in our little country? Sweet Douglas asks. Well, there would be many reasons for that. One is gang culture. The gang culture is the latest reason. The gang culture stepped up the murder rate. I think, this is my theory on the gang culture. I think I was saying this last night too. I think Trinidad has had a corrupt law enforcement scene for a long time now. That's because of our drug transshipment position. I don't think it's necessarily because the PNM government don't care, as if there was a government that cared per se more. Trinidad is uniquely placed as a drug transshipment point. The problem with the drug trade is there is a captured audience that will pay an increasing amount, and the amount will eventually reach the point of finding someone's price. Meaning, if there's a product being generated by the ton load in South America, and there is great demand for the product in North America and Europe, and the demand is as such that if the police crack down harder, all that's going to do really and truly is raise the price. So the harder the police crack down, the harder the law enforcement cracks down, the more expensive it gets, which makes it easier to bribe the law enforcement. So it's a kind of self-defeating balancing act they're playing here. So because of that, I think Trinidad would have been corrupt for a long time on the law enforcement front. Sweet Douglas, I'm not going to say it's not the government while it is the parents. That's not. The government has a lot of blame to take. But you're asking a question and I'm trying to get to the start of the question. Don't ask the question and then have an assumption on the question. Then don't ask the question. I'm trying to get to the bottom of that question. The crux of it. Why do we have so many killings? Is it that Trinis just murder us and more murdery than other people in the world? I don't think so. This is the reason. Our drug transshipment point had us as a corrupt nation for a very long time. We've been corrupt for a long time. I think the corruption would have depended on reasonable criminals. Reasonable criminals who want to maintain the status quo and do not have a vested interest in things getting too violent and scary. So those reasonable criminals would keep things reasonable. Some people say part of it was triggered at the coup. But for whatever reason, gang culture spread. And as gang culture spread, gangs are by nature unreasonable because they are reactionary. They don't they don't work necessarily on rules per se. They work on what the other gang did to them. Jasmine says the place too populated. That is an asinine reason, if I might say so myself. Yeah, but how we never come out so. Alright. So now let's go down the aspect of parenting versus government. Is it the government fault? Is it the government? Well, here's why I will say the government has a lot of fault to take in this. If we are to say that the government has nothing that they could do to decrease crime, then why even have a Ministry of National Security? Well, if we are to say that nothing in crime is the government's fault, then how are we ever to measure when they're failing or when they're doing well? The youth today have way more opportunities than we ever had. That's a fact. So, I do think the government has a part to play. I do think that the corruption that is in the at the level of our government and trickles down to the level of law enforcement and is partnered with the corruption in the judiciary, that corruption, that is partly the reason. And I know them. Oh, right, yes. Right now, I'm not doing good, very poor. Yeah, I agree the government isn't doing good. I agree 100% on that. And things that I hate to hear from our current government when we're talking crime. They're doing their best. Anything that the government says that sounds like they're saying they're doing their best, that's a horror story to us. How could you tell me that murders are happening 4x4, but yet we're doing our best? That's a scary prospect. I'm doing my best, but 4 people are being murdered per day. Then obviously your best isn't good enough. Like, what I would like to hear, I would like you to tell me, how do we improve this? That you have an idea of a direction to head in to improve this. Don't tell me that you're trusting the police in doing their good work and continuing to keep up the good work that they're doing. Because you're mama guying us. They aren't doing a good job. They aren't doing a good job. So you can't tell me that you're trusting the police to continue doing a good job on keeping the people safe and all this kind of nonsense while all these people are being murdered. No. That's the reason people ask for someone fired. Because they're saying, okay, the process, the current setup we have obviously isn't working. So we need to see you changing something about the current setup. What about the current setup? Okay, they added in a senior counsel as a minister in the Ministry of National Security in charge of the police. I hope he has some effect. Police are not magicians. Tobago cops say public won't help reduce crime. As Tobago continues to reel from a record 19 murders for 2024, Senior Superintendent Kirk has urged Tobagonians to work with police. We are not magicians. Kirk said gangs were targeting specific people. He said the police had been trying to get information on gangs so arrests could be made. The thing is, although we have been working, we wouldn't know when people would strike, but we know that they have the capability and who they may be targeting. And that is why we try to reach out to some of those persons to actually exercise a level of care and caution as well. But most of the persons are persons who are not willing to cooperate with the police, and they're willing to chance it themselves. And this is how it usually ends. He said murders were a national problem. He called for public support and a collaborative approach for tackling crime. We would see that there were some activities recently with the licensing officers working alongside the police, and you would realize how the Tobago public were critical. But again, a vehicle was used to perpetrate the crime that was perpetrated there. A vehicle was used on the one before, and a vehicle was used on the one before that. It tells me that criminals are using the opportunity to use a motor vehicle to come into the space and get away. I am asking the public, let the police do what they have to do. It may mean a little inconvenience for members of the public, but how can we do it without you? You see, this is that BS, that gaslighting nonsense that gets the police in trouble and causes no one in Trinidad to trust the police. This is that gaslighting nonsense. This is that bad ex memory that people have. I say any first offender for gun or violent crime automatically military, 2 years mandatory. I agree. But here's the problem. Here's the problem with all of that, Abu Friday. Before I'll get into what's the problem with all of that just now. My issue with the police here and this gaslighting is that here's what this officer in charge of Tobago is attempting to get Tobagonians to believe. The licensing officers are there to help reduce the crime because murderers are using motor vehicles. But the licensing officers were there all weekend doing their nonsense. And somebody drove and shot someone on Sunday. Or was that Monday? Monday. Yesterday. So, how are we to know when the licensing officers' job working? Because they were on the street all the time and the people were still able to drive in and shoot and drive out after they shoot. So, like, if you tell me that if the licensing officers do a road exercise today, that we will have no driving killings for the next 2 weeks, then you know what, officer? Alright, fine. Fine. I will take my nonsense TINT ticket. I will take my nonsense TINT ticket. But how are you trying to tell me that the licensing officers on the road day in, day out, the shooters on the road day in, day out, they seem to never cross paths? But yet I am supposed to stand the harassment of the licensing officers. Nah, man, obia. Them WhatsApp groups working, Nathan? Well, of course they are. And they'd be working without law-abiding citizens too. Don't mama guide the people. Those licensing officers out on the streets were not stopping violent crime. That's not what they were doing. I think if you had the licensing officers, remember the licensing officer, where was that? Somewhere in Port of Spain, the licensing officer tried to hit a man, he ran a man off the road. All this kind of Rambo driving, big hero driving nonsense they like. Well, okay, put them in their licensing vehicles all around the roads, and when they see criminals speeding going out, let them chase them. What happened in Arima? I don't know. Any of you all saw that shooting in Arima? The footage of the shooting in Arima, the drive-by shooting in Arima? I would like that explained to me still. Because there was a police van with lights on in the frame before the shooting happens. The shooting starts, the police van take off the light and skate out. The shooters pass right where the police was parked. Ready to sleep. That's very interesting. Police say nope, not today. Alright people, the host tell me that she's ready to sleep and she refuses to sleep without me finishing. So, the police ain't want no part since that it get charged. Come tell the people good night. And let's go do it. Tell the people good night. Tell them good night.
Good night.
I'm gonna sleep. Alright, that's all I have for now, folks. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. I am Nathan Springer. This has been the Mindful Live. Some are saying the road was blocked in that area. They had to make the wrongs. That excuse not making sense. As Trini Hotep says, be mindful, not mindless. Stay safe out there, people. Go and make at the babies. They're lovely to make. Good time. It's a good time to have. Peace out, people. Yeah, Trini Hotep, because I'm starting too late. I have to pull up my starting time. Yeah, we're working on that. Laters, folks. Bye.